Hello everyone, I'm Richard Macias, and today what I'd like to talk about is a very polarizing issue in the United States and something that we hear about every day, and that's gun control. If you do a quick Google search on gun control, you'll find many different arguments for and against it and why each of the sides believe that they are correct. So what we're going to talk about today are basically three issues concerning gun control and the banning of guns. And the first issue being that a ban on guns and gun control can be a violation of the U.S. Constitution and of several state constitutions. I'll also talk about how gun control is not a deterrent to crime and how in some places where with extreme gun control laws crime is actually higher. And finally talk about how legal gun ownership by persons has actually been used on many occasions by those people to defend themselves when they were potentially victims of crime. So one of the main arguments given by gun control advocates is that the Second Amendment only authorizes the right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of serving in a militia. Well, according to the District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008, the Supreme Court decision, it was decided that the Second Amendment protects individuals' rights to possess firearms unconnected to service in a militia. And it's traditionally for lawful purposes such as self-defense within your home being one example. The decision by the highest court in the land completely nullifies the argument that the Second Amendment is only for service within the militia. Now, if that case wasn't enough, there's a second case, McDonald versus City of Chicago in 2010. And what the Supreme Court found in that decision was that the Second Amendment right recognized in the Heller decision that I just spoke about was completely applicable to the states through the 14th Amendment, which states that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. Also in that case, the court reiterated that the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms for the purpose of self-defense, and that individual self-defense is the central component of the Second Amendment. Individual states have also recognized the need for its citizens to be able to keep and bear arms, and we see that in the fact that 44 of the 50 states in their state constitutions have a right to keep and bear arms clause, and it also states within those clauses that it is apart from service in a militia. So we can see that one's right to a basic self-defense is recognized by many legal systems from ancient times still today. Many times gun control and gun ban advocates look to other countries to try to give their information as to their justification as to why a gun ban would work, and to show how the gun ban has actually reduced crime in that country. They will tell you about how stories have made society in those countries so much better, and the reality is that the firearms themselves are just a tool for the criminal, and they will find other methods of being able to commit crime, and it doesn't necessarily deter crime. So according to a September 2014 article on Breitbart.com, handguns were virtually completely banned in England in 1997. The idea was that this would reduce crime and the safety of the citizens would increase. So how has it worked, you might ask? Well, in England, since that time, has become the most violent country in Europe. In 2009, just to give you some statistics, they had the worst rate for all types of violence, more so than the United States and South Africa. And at that point, England had a violent crime rate of 2,034 violent crimes per 100,000 residents. That was almost twice as high as the U.S. during that same time. So if you take that into consideration, the gun ban, shouldn't their crime rate be lower? And it clearly shows you that it is not. If you want to look at a country that's a little bit closer to home, just south of the border in Mexico, they have some of the strictest gun laws in the world. And yet in 2012, the rate of murders was close to over 9 murders per 100,000 people. At that same time in the United States, it was just over 2 murders per 100,000 people. So their crime rate was 3 times as high, the murder rate was 3 times as high in Mexico as it was here, but they have the much stricter gun laws. So again, that shows that it's not working. If we look here at home, we can see from Bureau of Justice Statistics that between the years 1993 and 2011, gun-related homicides dropped over 40%, and that non-fatal violent gun crime dropped 75%. During that time, legal gun sales increased. So I can see that we can see that gun bans really don't deter crime or actually drop it at all. And in another survey conducted by the Department of Justice, who surveyed prison inmates who had committed gun crimes, over 40% of them had stated that they obtained their guns from illegal sources, and that was not a deterrent if there was a gun ban. Finally, what I'd like to talk about is law-abiding citizens who have legally purchased a firearm, trained and become proficient in its use, and have used it to protect themselves. And so I took these sources from a Washington Post article from 2015. So not every case involved was a legal gun owner actually having to shoot and kill somebody. Just having a firearm was enough of a deterrent. In one case in Austin in 2017, an assailant armed with a knife kicked in the front door of a home and entered the bedroom where the homeowner and his wife were sleeping. The homeowner was able to get a firearm and hold that assailant until police arrived. Didn't have to fire a shot, but he was able to protect himself at that point. Just consider what might have happened had he not had a firearm to be able to protect him and his wife. A second case from Georgia in 2009, 2 armed men did a home invasion on an apartment where 10 people had gathered for a birthday party. These 2 men separated the men and the women into separate bedrooms, and they were heard speaking about if they would have enough bullets to murder everybody after they had raped several of the women. While one of the men with the gun held the male victims in one bedroom, the other went into the other bedroom and prepared to rape one of the females. One of the partygoers who was legal to carry a firearm and had a firearm with him was able to obtain it. Got into a firefight with both of those assailants. They both fled. All of the victims survived, and later one of the suspects ended up dying from the gunshot wounds. So you can see in that case that we might have had 10 innocent victims that were murdered had not one person had a gun to be able to stop that. And finally is a case in Colorado Springs in 2007 where a lone gunman arrived at the New Life Church in Colorado Springs, and immediately upon entering the parking lot where services had just entered, he shot 5 people, killing 2 of those people instantly. He then entered the church where there were still a large amount of people within the church, and there was one female who was somewhat acting as security for the church and was armed with a firearm. She made contact with the male. They became involved in a firefight. She was able to shoot him and stop him from furthering his attack on the church. It was later found that he had over 1,000 rounds of ammunition that he brought with him and several items that looked like explosives. So again, one person with a gun was able to stop what could have been a massacre at that point. So just think about those cases and what you might have done in a similar situation. So in conclusion, today what we talked about was the right to keep and bear arms. We can see the federal constitution as well as many state constitutions clearly define and give us the right to be able to do that and make it legal to do so. We see that severe gun ownership restriction actually does not deter crime, and in some places it's actually a higher crime rate when there are no firearms. And finally, we see that responsible gun ownership has an effective means to keeping ourselves safe from those that would otherwise do us harm. I believe it's a basic right in life to be able to protect yourself, and who can disagree with wanting to live with the comfort of knowing that you're safe and secure and can protect your family. So thank you for listening today, and have a good day.